Delaware House Bill 190 has sharply divided business leaders and environmentalists in the state. Supporters say the bill makes Delaware's Coastal Zone Act more business-friendly. Environmentalists warn the proposed changes gut the landmark piece of environmental legislation. We hear from both sides in this week's First Look. Delaware's Coastal Zone Act narrowly passed by one vote in 1971. The landmark legislation sealed former Governor Russell Peterson's legacy as a champion for the environment.
Russ would always say, they're going to come for this. And I think it's just an opportune time for them to come for this because, one, he's passed, so he can't come out and defend it himself anymore. Two, we're in such economic dire straits in the state that they think it's primed to, and the business side has been leaning on this since 1971.
Delaware Audubon President Matt Del Pizzo says businesses and state lawmakers see House Bill 190 as their chance. The Coastal Zone Act, or CZA, protects Delaware's coastal natural environment. It controls what type and where industries can develop along the Delaware River. 14 sites where heavy industry already existed pre-1971, like the DuPont Edge Moor site, were allowed to continue, but many of those 14 grandfathered sites now sit shuttered or underused. The brownfields are some of Delaware's most contaminated. Newark Representative Ed Osinski is HB 190's prime sponsor. He sees job opportunities at those sites, but says the way the CZA is written, unless the new owner does the exact same thing the previous owner did or uses it for manufacturing purposes, those sites can't be used.
There was really no flexibility there, and I think everybody in the business community realizes that a business that cannot adapt and be flexible, products change, industry activity changes, there's always new technology. So you gotta have that flexibility.
HB 190 establishes a permitting process, allowing prospective companies to bring new heavy industry to those grandfathered sites. State Senator Brian Townsend is the chief sponsor on the Senate side.
It's actually strengthened the framework of the coastal zone while allowing some new kind of economic activity as part of that balancing act.
Townsend says the new owner would be required to clean up the site, provide a sea level rise plan, and prove it has the money for cleanup should an accident occur. HB 190 would also allow the 9 sites in the coastal zone that had docks or piers before 1971 to apply for a bulk product transfer permit. In other words, if approved, a company could move bulk goods by ship along the Delaware River, which is currently forbidden under the CZA. This worries environmentalists who say one spill could reverse gains made in the 46 years since the CZA was passed. Former Governor Peterson's widow, June, penned a letter after HB 190 was introduced in May. It reads, "If alive today, Russ would be adamantly opposed to making changes to the Coastal Zone Act to allow for new heavy industry and bulk product transfer. I have no doubt that he would be in Dover lobbying for the sanctity of the Coastal Zone Act."
And the reality is some of the more possible economic opportunities, the more discernible economic opportunities might involve bulk product transfer.
But we're really hoping what we've done here with HB 190 will entice and attract some heavy industry. We realize that the bulk product transfer was an important part of that.
Osinski believes bulk product transfer has become safer over the years and says restrictions on it hurt businesses.
Our message is no one's coming. This is much ado about nothing. And this is just to appease the business interest. But there is a chance that you could get a bad actor that would come in and do irreparable harm in the coastal zone.
Del Pizzo says the CZA isn't keeping businesses away from Delaware. The economic decline of heavy industry overall is to blame.
If companies weren't coming because of it, then they would be looking at neighboring states or border parts of the river where they could do this, where they wouldn't have to clean up a site, wouldn't have to invest before they got started. So if you look up and down the river, there's zero industrial activity. There's no new sites opening.
Whether companies are willing to come here, given the global industrial trends, we don't know. But it's not putting anything at risk to try.
Del Pizzo says HB 190 risks opening up Pandora's box. The bill would only allow conversion permits for those 14 grandfathered sites. And oil refineries, steel mills, incinerators, they would continue to be forbidden under HB 190 as they have been since the CZA was enacted 46 years ago.
And if no one's interested, nothing changes.
Right, nothing stays, we're no worse for the wear, in other words. But Matt Del Pizzo with Delaware Audubon warns that any changes to the CZA weaken its protections and put wildlife and people who live around those industrial sites at risk.
And the Department of Natural Resources and Environmental Control would still be in charge of the permitting process for these new operators.
Right, but DNREC, opponents are saying that DNREC is already failing to enforce the Coastal Zone Act laws as they are on the books, and so they're concerned about the added responsibilities that HB 190 tacks on.
So what does DNREC say about all that?
I've emailed, I have called multiple times to DNREC, and I've really not gotten any sort of reaction. They largely have not been very cooperative.
And we saw this coming when Governor Carney announced his plans to modernize the coastal zone back in March when he talked to the General Assembly.
Right, we did. And Governor Carney then knew that this was going to be an uphill battle. That said, the legislators have the numbers to pass HB 190 in spite of any of protests from environmentalists or those opposing changing the CZA at all. Del Pizzo, though, wishes that the public had been more involved on the front end before lawmakers rolled out a bill like this.
All right, you'll find complete coverage of House Bill 190 and its opposition at newsworks.org/Delaware. Thanks, Shirley.
Sure.